Hey, what's up, guys? Chung here. So this time, let's take a look at another LeetCode problem here, number 678. Valid parentheses string. And you're given a string, right, containing only three types of characters: left parentheses, right parentheses, and a star. Write a function to check whether this string is valid or not. And notice that here, the star can be treated as a single left string or single right string. Sorry, can be treated as a single left parenthesis, a single right parenthesis, or an empty string. And it asks you to check if this string is valid or not. Right? So I'm pretty sure you guys have already seen like a similar problem, right? Whereas like there's another problem called valid parentheses where we only have two characters, either left or right, right? Something like that, right? If you guys remember that problem, so how did we solve that problem? We use stack, right? We use stack. Basically, we just simply like just when we see a left parenthesis, we push, right? And when we see a right parenthesis, we pop, and then we check if the top element of the stack is left or not, right? So that's the how we solve the other problem. And other than the stack, we can also use a counter, right? Basically, we count how many left parentheses and how many right parentheses, and we can just use that to also solve that problem. And then when it comes to this problem here, right? And so first, can we still use stack, right? And probably not, right? Why? Because when you see the star, right? Do you do a push or a pop, right? Do you append or do you pop? You don't know, right? Because the star can be left parentheses and also can also be right parentheses. You don't know, right? And then how about the counter, right? So yes, so for this problem, you can also use counter to solve it. Mm, but since we have the star here, since the star can be either left or right, we don't know, right? So how can we solve this problem, right? So in this case, since we don't know this star, so which it means that we there's gonna be a range of the counter. So basically, we will define like the minimum counter of uh the left the left parenthesis, right. Basically, we're gonna define the minimum uh like the minimum and maximum of the left parenthesis to need to be paired. So we're gonna define like a minimum and a maximum of the left parenthesis that needs to be paired. And so basically, when we see a left, right, when we see a left parenthesis, we know minimum needs to be plus plus. Also, the maximum also needs to plus plus, right? That's for sure because we see a left parenthesis. And when we see a right parenthesis, we know the minimum needs to be minus and the maximum also needs to be minus, right? And how about star here, right? If we see a star here, right? So the star it can be like left, right, or can be right. But in this case, which is assuming, when we see the star, the maximum will also need to be increased, right? Because if this one is star, is a left parenthesis, then the maximum will be like will be increased. And how about the minimum, right? So the minimum that's so the minimum will be decreased in this case because this star can also be a right parenthesis, right? And then in the end, we check what? In the end, we check if this maximum, sorry, if this minimum, if this minimum is equal to 0, then we know, okay, this string could be a valid string, right? Why? Because remember, so the minimum and the maximum is the range of the possible parentheses, the left parenthesis that needs to be paired, right? And 0 means there's no left parenthesis that needs to be paired, which tells us it's a valid string, right? And if this minimum is not equals to 0, then it means that after traversing all the strings, there is still one left parenthesis that needs to be paired, which means we're missing one of the right parentheses to match that, to pair that left parenthesis, right? So that's how we uh, that's how we do the final check. And while we're doing the traversing, right, we also check if the maximum, whenever the maximum of the pair parenthesis is less than 0, right? And then it means okay, we have seen too many of the right parentheses, right? So then it means that okay, we can simply return a false because we know uh when this maximum, because the possibility, so remember this is a range, right? So the maximum left parenthesis is negative, then it means we had seen too many right parentheses, even though regardless of how many left and the right parentheses we have seen so far together, right? Because see, so even when we see a left and a star, we will be both increasing this maximum. For example, here, let's say left, left, star, star, right? And then so let's say so here, right? So when we see the first left here, right? Uh, the minimum, right? The minimum is the minimum and maximum. They're all 0, right? So I'm gonna see a minimum here and a maximum here. Okay. So and when we see the second star left parenthesis, same. We increase those two, right? And when we see the star here, right? The star here, so the minimum needs to be decreased by 1, right? Because we know we want to see the range, right? It's kind of like greedy. We try to minimize the left count here. So the minimum will be decreased by 1 because this thing could be right parentheses. But the maximum is 3, right? Because and when we calculate the maximum, we're treating this star as a right parenthesis. Sorry, as a left parenthesis. I'm sorry. When we calculate the minimum, we treat this star as a right parenthesis. Same thing here, right? So it's going to be 0 and 4, right? Okay, so if the string stops here, right? And then we know, okay, so the range of the left parenthesis that needs to be paired is between 0 and 4. As long as the range includes 0, then we know, okay, this string could be a valid string, right? That's why if we stop here, then this string is a valid string, right? Okay, so let's check this thing here. And let's say if we add another parenthesis here, a right parenthesis here, and So this thing will be the minimum, but this thing here, and the max will be decreased by 1. And also the minimum also needs to decrease by 1. But keep in mind here, we will never allow the minimum to be -1, to be a negative value, because because what? um, because the minimum is the possible left uh, the the possible minimum left parenthesis that needs to be paired, right? And when we see this like right parenthesis and the left possible the minimum left possible parenthesis needs to be paired, it's still 0, right? Because and this one could be like a right parenthesis, and this one could be empty, right? So in that case, this like is still 0. And how about we see another one, right? So this one will be become 2, right? And still 0, right? Which means at this moment it's still a valid string, because now we're treating both of the stars to be to be uh to be empty string, right? Let's keep adding. How about now? Still 0 and 1, right? Still a valid, because as long as it's a 0, right? Then we know it's a valid string, because at this moment one of this string will be treated as empty, as a left string, left parenthesis. Let's add one more here. 0, 0, right? See, still 0, still valid. In this case, both of the stars will be served as a left parenthesis. How about here? Then still 0, but now this is become -1, right? So that's why I said as long as the maximum is negative, is -1, then we know it's not a valid one, right? Okay, so okay, that's the idea of this range of the left parenthesis that needs to be paired. Okay, cool. So let's try to code this thing. And I'll have a lower equals upper, right, to 0, and for character in S, right? If C equals to left parenthesis, we know lower +1, upper also needs to +1, right? Else if, right? Else if the C is equal to the right parenthesis, right? To the right parenthesis, lower uh, equal -1, upper -1, right? Else lower -1 and upper +1, right? And here we need to check if lower like smaller than 0, we reset it back to 0, right? And then if the upper, every time if the upper is less than smaller than 0, and then we return false, right? In the end, we return uh, lower equals to 0. So will this work? Let's see. Uh, yeah, so okay, I think in this case, so left upper, but when we do a star here, Yeah, so when it's a star, the lower will become 0. But then if the will this work? I mean, yeah, probably not. So probably not. So I think here is the issue. So for both, as long as the lower is going is will will ever be possible become like negative, we have to like do this check on both in both places here so that we can be sure this lower counter will never be negative. And let's try it again. Yeah, so now it passed. Basically, the just using like a range counters concept here because we have this star here, right? Because we have a star, and since the star can be either left parenthesis or right parenthesis, that's why we are maintaining like the possible left parenthesis number, either with a lower bound and upper bound, right? And in the end, we just check if this lower bound will can be 0, then we know, okay, we are this this string could be a valid string. And okay, cool. I think that's pretty much it is for this problem. Yeah, thank you so much for watching the video, guys. And I hope you guys enjoyed and see you soon. Bye bye.